All right, and welcome to another little demo by Raul, that's me. This time around, we're going to be talking about the Doepfer A140 ADSR envelope generator. And we're going to be looking at some of the basic features of it and how you can use it to shape your sound. So if you're unfamiliar with the term envelope, it's also sometimes referred to as a contour generator. We're going to talk about briefly what exactly it is and what it's going to be able to do for us. Up until now, we've dealt with modulation or control voltage sources that, for the most part, are frequency-based. That is, they, as you turn them, they tend to move up and down whatever it is that they're modulating. So when we would plug an LFO into a VCO, we'd hear the pitch go up and then down. Envelope generators are a little bit different. They're going to be waiting for a trigger to start their voltage because it does produce a voltage here. And when it senses a gate here at the gate input, that's when the envelope starts. And then it goes through a series of points in the envelope labeled here. So you have A, which stands for attack, and then D, which stands for decay, and then S, which stands for sustain, and then R, which stands for release. Let's talk about what each one of these means and how exactly it's going to affect the sound. So for the attack portion, what's going to happen is it's going to receive the gate, and as it receives the gate, the envelope then knows, okay, now it's time to raise the sound that's coming in to the attack level. And the amount of time that it takes to get to that level is going to be determined by the attack time. So right here, this is where you set it. So if you set it for a very short amount, the attack is going to be very short or quick. So as soon as it receives the gate signal, you'll hear the sound. A lot of very percussive sounds such as kick drums, snares, hi-hats, all kinds of stuff like that have a very short attack phase, which makes them sound the way they do. After it receives that initial phase and goes to its loudest point, it then comes down very quickly, depending on what you have this set to, into a phase of the sound, of the shape of the sound called the decay. And that little period of time is going to be determined by this dial here. After it leaves the decay time, it goes to the sustain time, which is the time, if you're using a keyboard, that you're pressing down the note. So as long as you're holding down the note, it's going to continue on the sustain time at whatever level you have set here. Now that being said, these are the three that will happen as it receives the gate or the trigger signal or the press of the keyboard, which are, in modular synthesis, they're almost the same thing. We're not going to be using a keyboard, so let me just precursor that. We're going to actually be using a gate signal from one of these two little friends over here that we have. We're going to be using a square wave because essentially a gate signal is a square wave. And basically the positive portion is going to be the portion where it knows or it feels like something is being pressed or the key is being pressed. And then as it's released, that is when the last dial here comes into play, the release, and then it goes to the release time, at which point the voltage then drops. This is kind of just a basic explanation. For the purposes of our demo, I didn't want to get too deep into this. I just wanted to do a little brief introduction into the terms that are involved in this module, because it is a fairly important module and you can use it in all kinds of different places, such as, modulating the control voltage of a filter or of a VCA, or if you want to get creative, you can even do control voltage of an oscillator and adjust the pitch, or pretty much anything that has a CV in. Essentially, you can almost patch it into that. So that's the basics of the theory behind this module. Now, the only port that we've talked about so far is the gate, and that's probably the most important because without it, none of these stages are going to be gone through. Now, there are a few other ports, and I do want to explain what those are before we go into the demonstration part. So let's go into that. Now, there's one immediately below the gate, which is the retrigger. This port can be used to retrigger the beginning of the envelope while the gate is being in the positive direction. So if you're holding down a key and it receives a signal right there at the retrigger, it'll continue to retrigger the envelope. You can use an LFO to do that or a sequencer. So yeah, there you go, retrigger. Immediately below that, you have the output. So the voltage that's created by this module is going to be fed out from the output here and then patched into whatever you decide to patch it into. The one immediately below it is going to be identical to it, so they're just both outputs of the envelope generator. Pretty straightforward. Now the one immediately below these two little twins right here is the inverse output. Now this is going to be a negative version of the output that's coming from the envelope generator. So if you were to visualize this, and let's say, just for the sake of argument, it makes kind of an upward V shape, kind of like a triangle wave. Then the negative version would be an actual V shape going down. So you'd have a triangle going up and then triangle going down if you had the inverse of it. Just an example. Okay, and then immediately below that, you're going to have this switch right here. And this allows you to adjust the amount of time that your envelope is actually going to affect the sound. So it's got three different settings. It's got a low, it's got a medium, and it's got a high. And to a certain extent, it's similar to the settings on LFO in that, the settings are not left to right or right to left. They actually start in the middle. So in the center position, you're actually in the low position where the envelope occupies the smallest amount of time, down to 100, I think it says microseconds. And in the medium range, it's slightly above that. And then in the high range, in the manual, it says it's up to minutes. So that's for very, very long evolving sounds that you might want to affect. And for the purposes of our demo, I thought I would break this particular module up into 3 sections. So that way we could do an effective demonstration of short sounds, and then medium sounds, and then high sounds. So for our demo this time, we're going to actually look at short sounds. And we're going to start with a sound that you've probably heard before. And it's called a kick drum. So everyone's heard a kick drum probably if you are in music or anything like that. So let's hear what we're going to use to create this. Now, this is just my way of creating a kick. I don't want to get into a philosophical debate about the best way to create a kick, but there are tons of ways that you can create a kick, and this is just the way that I chose to do it for this demo. So if you'd like to use this patch, by all means, go ahead. What we're going to use as our sound source is the VCO, and I'm going to take a triangle wave so you can hear what we're actually going to be working with. And here it comes. There's our triangle wave. Okay, so that's going to be our sound material. And I'm actually going to take that triangle wave, and I'm going to go into the audio in of our A101-2 low-pass gate. My setting is actually in the center position, so it's in combined mode, where it acts as a low-pass and a VCA at the same time. My resonance is all the way to the top, And the level of the input is about 3 o'clock, give or take a little bit. And my frequency setting is all the way at the 0 position. So just something to note here. Now, what I'm going to use to trigger my envelope, because that's going to be my sound source now, is I'm going to use this LFO right here, the A145. And as I said before, I'm going to take this square wave, I'm going to patch out from it, and I'm going to patch right into the gate. There we go. And we see our light flashing a little bit, indicating that the voltage is being triggered by the gate. So there you go. And depending on the brightness, that will tell you how sensitive or how affected it's being by the gate coming in. So just something to know when you're working with this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my output first before I feed my envelope, and I'm going to patch it into my mixer. I don't hear any sound, which is what I expect because my my frequency setting is all the way at the 0 position. So, and I have no modulation going into there yet. So I'm going to patch into the output, and then I'm going to patch right in here into the CV1, and we should hear a little bit of a sound. Here we go. So there's our little kick drum sound. And so that's the idea. Okay, so let's look at our envelope generator and see what's actually causing this to happen. We have a short release time. We have somewhat of a low sustain time. Our decay time is around 3, maybe 3.5, and our attack time is around 2. So let's see what happens just starting out if we set all of these to 0. We have no sound, which is what you expect, because then essentially your envelope is very, 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 very short, and you can even tell by the light it's not actually being affected because the voltage is so short. So now that I have that in mind, now I can start to bring in my attack a little bit, and then I start to get my sound back a little bit. And the more I play with my attack here, the more it kind of fades into the sound rather than kind of a click like you'd hear when you hit a bass drum or make contact with anything else. So you kind of just adjust this to taste. But right about there you get a nice little percussive hit to the kick drum, at least for my kick drum. Now at this point you can go in and start tweaking the other parameters. So the attack is being triggered and it's taking that much time to get there. We saw if you go a little bit higher, start to lose that percussive and start to just kind of slide more into the higher volume. So that's the kind of percussive sound I'm going to work with. So now I'm going to try to bring up the decay a little bit. Okay, I'm liking that. And then I'm going to bring my sustain up. And there I have a decent thumpy kick, electronic kick. Now you can't go overboard, as you heard a little bit with the sustain knob, because the sustain knob is when the gate is on, that's the voltage that it's going to continue at. So if I go a little bit too far, it doesn't quite sound like a kick, or at least what I'm accustomed to a kick sounding like, because you're accustomed to a kick, I guess, hitting and then going away. And somewhere in here you can find a happy level for what you want it to sound like. Go. And if I bring my decay down a little bit, it then goes immediately from the attack portion straight to the sustain portion. And you can hear that right there. Let's try playing with the release a little bit. Now we're not going to hear it quite as much because this is a fairly short amount of time that we're dealing with here. Come in some of the later demos when we're looking at the medium setting and the high setting, this will be a little bit more pronounced, but for this short sound, we're not going to quite hear it as much in this demo. So there you go. Now I'm gonna play with the settings just a little bit. So I'm gonna bring the attack up a little. And I'm trying to get a particular sound where we can hear the attack phase and then the volume comes back down at the sustain level. Yeah, right there. So what's happening is it's loud, it gets loud, and then it comes back down in volume. I may even get a little bit more when I bring my release up. And you can kind of hear it there where it kind of comes back down on the sustain level. Whereas if I bring my release all the way down, kind of shorter cutoff at the end. There we get a little bit too much decay time as it approaches the sustain time. And here you're kind of losing the whole kick idea entirely. It's starting to sound more like maybe like a short pad or something. But you adjust it to taste. You know, whatever you think you're aiming for with your sound. So we have the idea with a basic kick going on here. So now that we have the idea about what's happening here, this is triggering this. Let's actually tweak the frequency a little bit so we can hear that. And our kick goes a little bit faster. There you go. Now, let's look at the inverse output. So we're going to patch into inverse output. And let's go right into, let's adjust the pitch here. So there you can hear it changing the pitch. Let me try changing the octave a little bit. So you can hear that there's an effect going on, and it's actually doing an inverted version of the envelope. That's the basic idea. We'll hear some more demonstrations of that in the next coming section. Alright, now the last thing I'm going to show you is the retrigger. So I'm going to patch into the retrigger, just so you can hear what that sounds like. So every time that this gate is triggering the envelope, then this is retriggering the envelope here at the retrigger end. So it gives you almost like a double kick sound. Lots of possibilities even just with the short setting or the low setting here on the A140 ADSR. Well, that's going to do it for this particular section. I'm going to wrap it up right here so that we can go on to the medium section and do a little bit of a set change here. So hope that you found this useful and it opened your eyes a little bit to the A140. Hope to see you soon in the next demo.